Chapter 28. The feds hadn't moved the rental van. Rash found it still sitting just around the corner from Police Plaza. He supposed they hadn't thought it was important, or maybe they hadn't realised it was his. It had been sitting there untended for days, but miraculously it still had all its tyres. No engine parts were missing, and the only graffiti was "Wash Me" written in the greasy dirt on the back door. He'd obviously picked the right neighbourhood, one with plenty of cops coming and going at all hours. Rash had never planned to keep the rental this long. The bill, when he turned it in, was going to be a real killer. He needed it a little longer, though. He drove the streets for a while, planning, trying to figure out just how he could keep the feds from turning Schaefer over to those monsters from outer space. He didn't know enough. He didn't know who he could trust, didn't know what it would take to stop those things. Well, he'd just have to go up there ready for anything, and he thought he had an idea how to do that. He left the van double parked while he ran into the police academy building on 20th. The firing range was still closed, but Salvati was back on duty upstairs, despite the fading bruises that made one side of his face look like an oil slick. He looked up at the sound of the door. "Jesus, Rash," he said. "Where the hell have you been? People have been trying to reach you for days, Brownlow and those guys." "I was doing my taxes," Rash said. "Look, Sal, I need a favour." "I don't know, Rash," Salvati said nervously. "I don't need Macomb after my ass." "I'm after those bastards who trashed the range," Rash said. Salvati's expression changed abruptly. "What do you need?" he said through clenched teeth. "Firepower," Rash replied. "Whatever you can get me, and no paper trail. This has to be off the record." "The feds?" Salvati asked. "Are those bastards trying to cover it up?" "Something like that, yeah." "I knew it! God damn it, Rash." "So what have you got?" Salvati thought for a moment, then said, "Anything you want from the cases downstairs that didn't disappear, plus the stuff we took from those Jamaicans. You were in on that, remember? It's all still in the lab. The boys got pretty backlogged with all that shit from the Beekman massacre and the mess downstairs. There's all kinds of heavy stuff there. The Somalis got a bit carried away on the deal." "I remember," Rash said, smiling grimly. This was better than he had expected. Chances were half the stuff wouldn't work, since most criminals were too stupid to take proper care of their equipment. But Rash remembered how extensive that arsenal was. You could lose half of it and still have enough to take out damn near anything. Not just machine guns, but grenades, rocket launchers, everything. That ought to be enough to get Schaefer away from the feds, or from whatever was flying those ships. "Give me a hand with it, will you, Sal?" Salvati nodded. "I'll get a cart." People looked up and watched curiously as Rash and Salvati hauled the weapons out onto the sidewalk and loaded the van. But no one said anything and no one interfered. After all, Rash thought, who would be crazy enough to walk out with that stuff in broad daylight if they weren't supposed to? Rash smiled to himself. He might not be as crazy as Schaefer, but he was getting there. For his part, Schaefer had been choppered out of the jungle, flown to Newark aboard some sort of fancied-up army jet that looked as if it was meant for VIPs, then marched straight across the tarmac to a waiting copter. He was being treated as a very important person, and that made him very nervous. "All right," he said to Phillips as they boarded the chopper. "We're back. Now I want some answers." Phillips looked at him, but didn't answer. He did wave off the two guards. They looked surprised. Schaefer guessed that they had thought they were coming along. Maybe that meant once they were in the air, without any unwanted ears listening in, Phillips would be willing to talk. Schaefer climbed aboard and strapped in without saying anything more. Once they were aloft, though, Schaefer demanded, "What the hell are we dealing with? What was that thing I killed? Who were those things that took out Echeverra's camp?" Phillips shook his head. "You want a name?" he said. "We haven't got one. You want a place? Not Earth. And that's damn near all we know." Schaefer glanced at him, obviously disbelieving. "You want theories, though? We got a dozen, 100, Phillips told him. "We've got legends and guesswork up the wazoo. The people back there in the jungle tell us they've been coming here for centuries. Always in the heat, when it's hot even for the goddamn tropics. They don't like cold, don't like anything we consider decent weather. But when it's a fucking steam bath, like this year, Schaefer said. Phillips nodded. Yeah, he said. Anyway, they hunt. They like the chase. We've got people who think it was these things wiped out the dinosaurs, hunted them to extinction. For all I know, it's true. All that Inquirer crap about aliens and ancient astronauts. For all we can really tell about these things, it could be true. There's one guy we've got who says these things may have bred us, helped our technology, started our wars, to build up more interesting targets, more challenging prey. And for all we know, the son of a bitch could be right. He shrugged. Or he could be full of shit. Maybe they've only been coming since we started shooting at each other. Maybe the smell of gunpowder brought them. We don't know. We don't know shit about them. And everything we thought we did know, well, we never thought we'd have to deal with them this far north. Schaefer said, not our problem if they don't mess with us, huh? Something like that, Phillips admitted. Up until now, going by stories we've heard, by the radar traces we've mapped, they've only hit the equatorial countries. South America, maybe Africa, possibly Asia. He grimaced. Goddamn greenhouse effect. Or maybe they just got bored with the jungles, Schaefer suggested. Hell, if Earth's Disneyland, New York's got to be an e-ticket. Could be that, Phillips agreed. He hesitated. Or it could be something else. Schaefer looked at him, waiting. You think it's a coincidence? That thing tagging the brother of the one man we know's beaten them? Not one man in a million ever sees one of these things, and the two of you do, thousands of miles apart. These things seem to like you Schaefer boys. Maybe they can track the genetic pattern somehow. Maybe they just smelled you. We don't know. But maybe they came to New York looking for you. Schaefer stared at him silently for a moment, considering that. Good, he said at last. They'll like me even more after I blow their ugly asses straight to hell. Phillips shook his head and drew his trusty old .45. I'm sorry, son, he said. I'm afraid we got something else in mind. He leaned away from Schaefer and pointed the pistol at him. Schaefer stared again, then said, I should have guessed. You're giving me to them, aren't you? I'm afraid so, Phillips said. You killed one of them, Schaefer. If we don't turn you over, there's no telling what they'll do. It was trying to kill me. That doesn't matter. They came after you, Schaefer. You saw that in that camp. They don't care about this Echeverria. They wanted you. Schaefer nodded. I'd figured that much for myself, he said. So why do you pick me up? Why didn't you just let them have me? Because we need to make a goodwill gesture, Phillips replied. We need to let them know we're trying to help them, trying to communicate with them. They don't seem real interested in talking, General. But we have to try. Because you're too goddamn chicken to fight them. Phillips exploded. Damn it, Schaefer, be realistic. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of lives here. Maybe millions, maybe the whole damn planet. We need to show them we aren't hostile, so they'll go away and leave us alone. They don't consider us worth talking to, or they wouldn't hunt us. And we can't let ourselves be too dangerous, or they'll wipe us out. So we're trying to find a middle ground, show them we're smart, but friendly. Why? Why not fight back, if you want the bastards to respect you? Fight? Phillips shook his head. Schaefer, you saw that blast site in the jungle, that crater. Dutch told us that was done by a gadget that the one he fought carried on its wrist. Even if they don't bring in their heavy artillery, imagine the devastation if something like that exploded in New York. The city would be destroyed. Schaefer glared at him. You say that as if it was a bad thing. Christ, Schaefer. So you're going to give me to them. What do you think that'll do? You think they'll say, "Oh, thank you, sorry sir, we're sorry we bothered you," and go away and never come back? I think it will get them the hell out of New York. They'll have what they came for. Wasn't me they butchered, Phillips. They came for fun, not for me. You were the one they marked, though, with that thing on your neck. And maybe they want the fun of finding me for themselves. Maybe you're going to be the guy who gives away the ending of the movie, handing me over. Maybe they'll be more pissed than ever. Ever think of that? Damn it, Schaefer, we can't let them chase you through the streets. Innocent people will get hurt, and everyone will see them. It'll start a panic. We've been keeping this hushed up for years. Maybe you shouldn't have, Schaefer interrupted. Maybe you should let people know what's out there. Let them stand up for themselves. You can't stand up to these things. I did. Dutch did. All right, but nobody else. Most people just die when they come up against one of these hunters. Look, Schaefer, this may be our chance to talk to them, to convince them we're intelligent, to make real contact. They know how intelligent we are, Schaefer said, which isn't very in most cases. Thing is, they don't care. Yeah, well, maybe if we show them that we can help them, they'll care. They want you, Schaefer, and we're going to give you to them. I've got a better idea, General. Schaefer's hands flew out without warning and grabbed Phillips' wrist, shoving upward. The .45 fired, and the slug punched a hole through the copter's roof. Sorry about this, Schaefer said, as he snatched the pistol away with one hand and knocked Phillips aside with the other. The general struggled, tried to hold on to the gun, but he'd never been caught by surprise and was no match for Schaefer in any case. His head hit a steel rib, and the old man folded into an unconscious heap on the floor. Schaefer checked the general's pulse. Phillips was still alive, just out. Then he took the .45, pulled aside the drape separating the passenger compartment from the cockpit, and put the pistol's barrel to the pilot's head. "Hi," he said. "Where are we headed?" The pilot started, looked up, saw the pistol, gulped, and said, "The MetLife building. The heliport on the roof there. The brass are trying to arrange some kind of special meeting, I heard." "What kind?" "They didn't say. Just told me not to be surprised by anything I saw there." "Right," Schaefer said. "You just keep on then. You're doing fine." "Yes, sir." Trying to arrange a meeting, he had said. So Phillips wasn't really in communication with the aliens. He'd probably just been planning to stake Schaefer out on the rooftop there, like a goat as bait for a tiger. It probably wouldn't even have worked. Those things had their own ideas. If Phillips had really wanted to keep them happy, he should have just left Schaefer loose in the jungle and let them track him down there. Schaefer watched the familiar skyline sliding past. As they approached the Midtown heliport, he counted 6 military types on the roof. He didn't see any of the creatures, but then, even if they were there, he wouldn't see them. Not with that invisibility gadget they used. 6 men didn't seem like very many. He supposed the feds were trying to keep the operation low-key. Wishful thinking. Maybe that was their problem, Schaefer thought. You don't wish this kind of trouble away. You got to face it. It was time to quit pretending there was some easy solution. Time to show those ugly mothers who was the boss around this particular planet. They'd had their way long enough. "Set it down nice and easy," he told the pilot. "Then just sit quietly and be a good boy." "Yes, sir." The landing came off without a hitch. Then Schaefer just waited. He didn't open the door. Instead, he just stood beside it, waiting, with the pistol still pointed at the pilot. Sure enough, the men who had been waiting on the roof got impatient. One of them slid the door open. Schaefer's fist took him in the face, and in an instant Schaefer was out of the copter and snatching up the M16 the man had been carrying. He stood and faced the others on the rooftop with a weapon ready in each hand and shouted, "Drop 'em!" The other 5 hesitated, then, one by one, they dropped their weapons. Schaefer smiled. He was back in control. The aliens weren't here, but they were going to come after him sooner or later, he was sure. And when they did, he'd be ready for them, not staked out and helpless, but able to give them the fight they probably wanted. Maybe he could convince them not to mess with the Schaefer boys. He might die doing it, of course, but that was nothing new. He could die any time. "Put on some music and open up the bar, boys," he said. "It's party time."